So where do we start? Where do we begin?
Where do we start? Where do we begin? That's actually the first question.
Okay.
How exactly did you set about this journey some odd, 10 plus years ago now?
So, okay.
What was the inspiration for the book which you have written?
So Lucian is even older than this story's beginning. Mentioning former RPs was kind of on purpose earlier. There was one called Eden that a mutual of ours dragged me onto, along with a different friend of mine, and I had to make up a character, and I was like, you know how I get with making characters. Let's make something interesting. And so I just decided to make this guy who's an assassin with a case of faces, basically. The whole trick was he didn't have a bunch of really cool weapons. He just had some basic, implements and whatnot. But his thing was he had this briefcase with just tons of IDs and different, people he could almost immediately turn into. Kind of like that Ethan Hunt mask thing that they were doing in the very first Mission Impossible movie, where he could, put on the mask and be, suddenly somebody else. And that site died because every form RP just died randomly.
Very much so.
And I went off to law school, and I would play around with Lucian here and there with just like writing ideas and kind of flesh out the world that I wanted him to have gone to after having been in that. And it was like, it must have been 10 o'clock in the morning in Spain in 2012. And I'm just getting done with the first class of the day for my summer abroad program I was in that summer. And I was bored in this class. And it's comparative law. Like, it's comparative constitutional law. So it's not really like interesting stuff, especially if you've kept up with the reading. I'm way ahead of stuff. So I'm sitting at my table drinking probably orange juice at that point, because I don't think we had started drinking wine in the middle of the day yet.
Yet.
That would happen later on that trip, not at that point. But matter of fact, I'm almost certain it was orange juice, because I wasn't supposed to have orange juice, but I would have it during that class to stay awake. And so I started writing with actually one of the things that you made me switch its position, because of it not really kind of flowing right. It was too exposition-y. And I started writing with that very first sentence that you first had me move to later in the story. That was the first thing I ever wrote for it. And it just kind of started naturally happening. Like, I was seeing this fake city, I was making up names for places, and I was really kind of, padding out things like the character and whatnot. I had already had an RP-ish looking thing with I don't know if you remember Harley, our hilarious young one, for a while there.
No recollection.
Don't worry, it's okay that you don't. But I had been somewhere else with her, and she had wanted to have that character in something, so I already had like a little bit of a bones of what Tavros Cove was going to be. And then like I said, I had the basics to Lucian already for a while at that point. And so it was just like, I just need to add people. And so that's how I came up with a lot of the cast of characters. That's really where I came up with the name itself for the book. I was just like, it needs to have like an antagonist that just like grabs you immediately. And that's where we got the Man Called Dragon.
Yeah, see, I don't even remember like 90% of the events you described. I don't remember what the original story looked like, or telling you to move this thing or that thing. That happened so long ago, and I've had to do so much since then that my brain is just like, the what
Right.
now?
Yeah. For folks that are watching this stream and are gonna pick up the book when it's available on Friday, um, look out for the very first description of cars and a stoplight. That
Oh
began the story.
no, I am remembering now. No, that was even before I had any creative writing classes. I was like, this is bad.
You're like, don't do this here. This does not go here. And I was like, all right. I said there are very few people that I trust. One, to both know my voice and how I want to sound, and is going to give me good advice. And that was I'll never forget you saying that. Like, no, he's got a point. It doesn't do it. It needs something first, and yeah, it worked.
So, what plans do you have for the future after this book?
So Darkland is going to be these four books. This first one, The Man Called Dragon. The second, The Lady from the Rising Sun. The third, um, is a difficult decision. I don't know which name that I've come up with that I actually want to be the title for the third book. It's either going to be The Sweltering Heat or Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
I have already put like way more advanced thought into anything I have ever done. You have book titles like 3 books out. I I I don't even have book title 1.
But I had to, because it's like I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through all that I wanted to do with this character in this first story. Like, it just didn't make sense. And if you remember, this used to be 5 books, not 4.
I remember.
So it was like I had to have all of the, okay, what happens in this one? What happens in this one? And know that I can just keep dragging that through the process until we're actually done, and they were finished. And then honestly, when you made the suggestion to combine the first 2 books together, that was like great. I don't have a samey sounding second book title. That means everything sounds unique, but also clearly fits the same theme. This is my love letter to a bygone era of film, certainly, but to the books I loved as a kid.
Yeah, my suggestion for merging the two stemmed a lot from the fact that you didn't even have a novella length project at that point in time.
True.
It's essentially, it's a problem that I think stems from the background of the RP form, where you're used to writing a post of like a certain length and then leaving like a cliffhanger and then continuing in a part 2. And so it was yeah, it was like you really need to have more here, because you just like it gets to a good part and then it just stops, and you're gonna have people wait for like another book to pick up. Like
Well,
you ended at like the worst possible part to have it end.
but that was entirely by design, because I was really originally thinking, okay, those would just be short stories, and then they got too long to be short stories, and I just like,
Yeah.
oh no, I might be saying too much. Well, I'll just stop here and keep working on the next one. And if anything, like whoever's gonna edit this thing will tell me whether I should keep going. And that was the main thing. You're like, yo, this is too short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you reached an awkward point where it was too long. Like even in that first like one that you sent me where I said this is too short. You were too long to be a short story, and it didn't have like a satisfactory short story ending. But it was
Mhm.
too short to be a novella. I was like, you got to do something about this. This is in a weird middle ground area that like is just unsatisfying.
And luckily, I had already had so much of the second one finished by that point, because because I'll even remember it wasn't right away. It was probably like a couple years later. I immediately knew what I wanted to do with the second story. So I took the outline that I had already worked on for it and just
Hmm.
was like, let's just go, like, and it was just hammering away at the second one. And I kept having this feeling of there's no reason to name this book the same way I've named the first one. It needs something different. And yeah, the different thing was combining the two.
Yeah, it really if once you had combined them and you said you was like, okay, I think I solved the problem you mentioned. I just combined them. It flowed seamlessly as if it was just supposed to be one story.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and once I read through it after it was done, before I sent it to you, I was like, okay, this makes so much more sense. Like, I entirely agree. This was the right idea. I definitely needed to do this. Totally saw it. But again, that goes back to you knowing both my voice and style, but also the right way to push me towards things. Like I really
Yeah.
think that's underrated, especially, you know, when we talk, as writers to each other about stuff. It's one thing. It's a different thing when you put the editor hat on and you really get to work on stuff. Like I don't know that I could trust somebody the way I have trusted you with this. Really.
Yeah. It has been definitely an interesting 10 plus years of working on this project on and off. It wasn't 10 like straight years of just grueling over this project. He'd like send me a draft, I would send him the edits, and then I wouldn't hear back about it for like 4 years.
Yeah, because like the first time I had you read, I was like, "Yo, does this make sense?" And then I just kind of dropped it for a while because I was busy doing other stuff. Well, practicing law. But and then it came
Yeah,
back to like,
the first email exactly that you sent me is you sent me the Word document and said, I need a logic check on this.
yeah, I really wasn't sure that like it was coherent enough to be anything. It's like I was really just working on this in the summertime, and I don't know whether it's actually worth anything. Uh, oh man, I think one of the fun ones for me was like right after I sent it to you, that probably that first time trying to figure out like what it was missing. It's like, because that wasn't when you told me to combine the two, because I hadn't even written the second thing at that point. It was more like, all right, this is right, but I don't know what else goes in here. And that's where I put in the the sequence that's in the snippet that is going to be read later. That's where that went in.
You did mention earlier about it being sort of a love letter to old movies that you enjoyed and things of that nature. So, like, what kind of inspiration did, like, specific titles?
Okay, so there is. I think we could probably go with five. I'll go with the five, the main five, because obviously I love cinema in general. I love film noir. Like you could say every film noir had some influence, but the main ones that influenced Chinatown, um, From Here to Eternity, of course the Maltese Falcon because it's one of those movies, Casablanca, and Brick, and then books wise, um, certainly Sherlock Holmes is always an influence because I think you can't write certain things with mystery without having some influence. But honestly, the really big influence for me, and this kind of indirectly leads back to Sherlock Holmes, and it's Encyclopedia Brown. It's a kids detective mystery series. I My mom, before I learned to read, she would read me the books and try to get me to guess what the actual solution was, because the whole premise behind Encyclopedia Brown is you're going to get like five or six, maybe even a few more stories in a single book, and it's a mystery. And he's going to tell you, okay, I solved the mystery. Here's what really happened. And then you got to guess what clues were given in the rest of the story to tell Encyclopedia Brown why uh, this was the solution. And then in the back of the book, just like a textbook for school, were the actual answers, so you could find out whether you were right or not. So before I
Ah.
could read, my mom would read those and have me guess. And when I learned to read, I would read them myself, like in the car as we were going somewhere, or just in the house. Like she would want me to read. My reading time was part of my weekend as a kid, and so I got really used to doing all the deductive reasoning and reading for clues inside stories from Encyclopedia Brown. And I'd say I must have been maybe in second or third grade. HBO came out with an Encyclopedia Brown TV series. So I consumed all of that like on repeat. I would literally record them on VHS tape so I could watch them over and over again, even though I'd seen them like 4 or 5 times already. And I love the books. Like though, if somebody could find me that like I think 70s and 80s are the first and second editions for those. If somebody found me those, they would probably be one of my most cherished like possessions books wise, other than my Michael Connelly books that he signed for me. Like I absolutely like, I still love Encyclopedia Brown stories. Like when I see somebody who's written something, especially even if it's targeted to kids, that has done that same sort of structure, I absolutely love it. Just it's still one of those things I love. I love that style. I love looking through the movie or the TV show or the book and looking for the clues that tell me how we got to the ending that we got to. It's just it it's ingrained in me deeply. I actually have to stop myself from doing that multiple times while writing this. Oh.
Wait, so you have a section of your book which you are going to be reading, so I will leave you to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get in here. Let's get into the snippet. Okay. So, this is from chapter 2 of The Man Called Dragon. I am really excited to present all this to you all. It's been as you've heard from Emtenn already, it has been a very long process to get here. But I was really happy with this particular section, just because of a lot of the things it does, and I wanted to share it to kind of give you all sides of what's going on with the story. This has both some dialogue to it, as well as some of the more exposition side of things. So I really hope you all enjoy this. And yeah, welcome to The Man Called Dragon. And it is available this Friday. It's going to be on basically all of your digital ordering platforms: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and there's a few more, but I'll be announcing those here soon as well. So, from chapter 2. The streets here are filled with the dregs of society. Junkies with open sores from injections, worn and used up bodies from cracks, smack, and meth litter the streets with the filth of imperfect dreams turned into a drug-induced haze of their former lives. Drunken dilettantes surround dilapidated structures that tell old tales of what once was. Their symbolic discussions of politics and the world of this little corner of their twisted paradise. A lot like the poverty-stricken versions of the international news programs often playing while he fixes weapons, makes phone calls, and keeps up the industrial structure he makes his home in. Their drunken rants are almost soothing compared to the wailing and crying of the mentally challenged who are dumped here, abandoned by the ones who claim to love them to the rough life of these streets and a sentence as good as death. They wail and moan to unknown gods and carry favor only with the ones as mad as they are deranged. This derelict mass of bodies parade moonlit sorrow and psychedelic trips gone bad before him each time he's forced into the streets. He passes rows of squatted squalor, dingy white tents against dirtied walls. He almost grins at the dark-soaked deep of dead tenement towers and shanty castles. Drops random mints from high-class bathrooms, general change, and a spot or two, some silent cash. It's all some generalized joke of losers, failed dreamers, and endless shames. Horror grips the misplaced members of another world, it seems, who stumbled into the same area he walks alone. His steps make little noise, and only the sound of wind sweeping across softened leather-bound casings and the strings inside seem to be in the air. He's done this too many times for it to bother him or even register. It passes like the night air into his mind and out again. The pimp in front of him does nothing but help calm his nerves. His overdone jewelry and violent reaction, nothing more than a marker of what night it is as he strolls. The hot neon gas has made the bright light the only beacon and driven out the truly lost souls to replace them with the disillusioned hipsters. The used up souls of filthy angels treat this place as precious ground, mixed in with the brave souls who call this slumming and the truly transcendent who follow only the music and the pain it takes. They fill this watering hole of the slightly sane, mentally beaten, and the corrupted and vain who named this place Eden. Children of a lesser god trying to fulfill some unknown purpose and find the relief that can only flow in their veins. He strides in their direction before ducking past them in their circles of mental battering rams used to denigrate the subjugated world outside them en masse. He waves a hand to that used-up cougar who pours drinks like the Depression, stretching her mob-lifted liquor into protection fee-owned glasses, steins, and shots of liquid social lubricant, courtesy of whoever's low-end henchman she's decided to give away that gaping maw between her legs to. He weaves through the standing and quivering crowds that haven't yet found the comfort to enjoy a seat, chattering about the decor and rustic, authentic feel of the dive they willingly strode into despite warnings. He takes a simple seat on stage right, not quite in the mood to open, so he waits for the signal that it's okay. He takes out this one, another old guitar not likely to survive this evening's performance, tuning it behind a simple pitch pipe he swiped back in the 10th grade. Never been more than a crooner to these unloved freaks. Nothing more than a way to pass the time to the unthought of nothings that don't nail hopes on becoming more than just another one to survive. He's far from a late night hero, slightly more than a juke joint Jezebel, and deeper than an existential revisionist who specializes in psychotropics and huddles in soup kitchens. His songs aren't his. They roll off his tongue with tiny bits of venom to poison his listeners against calling him anything more than a simple guitar junkie. He licks cold, muddy waters and hot howling wolf, mixed with Etta and Ella and BB, while they don't place his true complexities with his scratchy, growling vocal cords and soulful swoon. He tunes and then trips his fingers across the strings for steamy interludes with the chords he hopes to play between this last trip to reality and back to shadow, shaking hands with the world long enough to do business and then back here to faded pictures and broken promises, faked identity, and falsehoods of fate. The long, smooth cold of his once empty factory, now his gallery for guns, blades, picks, and now another stringed lever. His turn is here now, and he sits down normally without old glasses or sheet music. His memory serves him like a portrait of past lines written, sculpted and chiseled into the marble makeup of his mind. Slow songs like subtle shocks of electricity and release steam hidden waves of the moon built tide before shattering into sail on my little honeybee, sail on. Familiar lines that quiet the alcohol-filled chatter and drown the lame attempts at pickups by lamer old players and washed-up old women with Newports and enough makeup to be clowns or their own just too old Mary Kay product line. You gonna keep on sailing till you lose your happy home. He plays some slide, but not like the original author. Makes the time a bit more dark and the tune a bit more lovely, less bright and brassy for those in this den of crows. Looks up a minute to see the shuffling masses, shuffling into broken down degenerates dancing dirty two-steps and slides seductive glances across filthy floozies and broken down harlots. Master of their mischievous wishes and sexually urged desires, the dank of his vocals masking the dreary of the dive bar's tattered and worn out woods, watered down liquored moshing, hand-washed handmaidens' halters. She been all around the world making honey, but now she's coming back home to me. The first song finished to melancholy responses and two drunk claps and off-tempo rhythmic stomps at the end. Hipsters trying to act cool and pretend to not enjoy classic blues guitar and vocals. Standing in thrift store purchases and attempts at irony and clothing that only succeed in coming off as increasingly more pompous and arrogant. Unlike the drunken slobs and everyday junkies, they live to tempt fate down here and use it for stories back in their secure suburbs and office parties, while they attempt to outslum their counterparts like it's a substitute for measuring their underperforming cocks. He just cuts them a glare and smiles at the drunk dancing mob that beats slow time, content to give him more fun. He doesn't play for these posers. He plays for the feeling. Plays for the escape from a world that would only want to know Lucy and Cool's job skills, not his personality.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Can't give him too much. Gotta let him read to see where that goes.
I forgot I muted my microphone so that none of my sounds came through, like coughing or something. So I was
All
like,
good.
oh, no, wait, he's down. I gotta unmute. Shit. Also, I might have started playing ambient music in the background while you I found no copyright noir jazz.
Oh, man. No, I'm really proud of the section that comes from. Like, all of chapter 2 is really great, but from there until his meeting of a woman named Donna uh, is probably one of my favorite sections to reread in the entire book. It's like, it's not just the pace of it, it's the interactions between them. It's like how I was able, like, I don't know how I got into the place to write all that. It just, yeah, it just worked. And it gets me every time.
Right. And yeah, I really like that scene, especially the lead up to it. I felt really like gives the noir a kind of just essence and atmosphere really well. That's what I was like. When you asked me for a section, I was like, this one.
Uh, I'm telling you, it's one of those, like, every once in a while, especially when making this thing, I would get into this groove of how to describe stuff that, you know what I mean? Like, there's points in there where it's just, it slips into a different place. It's not just telling the story. It's not just doing some dialogue. And that was just one of those. It was just like, I love this. I need people to understand, like, this is in here. Like, if you, when I say this is a love letter to all of those old stories and all of those old films, like, this really is that. Like, if you didn't mentally start seeing yourself in, like, black and white watching this guy play guitar on a stage somewhere, I would tell you, like, you're gonna get
in my defense, I don't mentally see anything.
True. But I meant, like, for people, for the people for watching or watch this later on, it's
yes,
it's kind of meant to grasp that, So
yes. I also really like it pacing wise because it's essentially the calm before the storm.
yeah. That's like the last time where he feels normal before the pace of everything picks up. And I felt like it needed that. When I first sent it to you for that logic check, that was the thing that was in my brain. I was like, it's too much everything happening all at once. It's like, this needs something else. And yeah, I had to go back for that.
So is there a link currently for the book, or is that forthcoming?
No. It will probably be up tomorrow for pre-orders. If I remember correctly, Ingram Spark was saying until the proofs have their final approval, the links can't go up. But I do know, obviously, Thursday and Friday, the links will be up so you can pre-order so that it can ship out on publication date.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and like
I felt like that was an important question to ask.
Barnes and Noble for certain, Amazon for certain, and then because it's on Ingram Spark, local small retailers are able to get the book at the book price, the wholesale price. Libraries are also able to get the book. So if you want to help me grow as an artist, people, just tell your local library to buy my book. Buy my book.
That is actually not a difficult process. If I remember correctly, you can go to most libraries and offer a suggestion of a book that you would like, and they will generally be capable of requesting said book.
Mm-hmm. And with the smaller retailers, because of the wholesale price being in there, it's fairly easy for them to get books. They just need to know, like, they're not going to get a ton of them if you're, a brand new author like me, basically. So, like, it's a little bit more tumultuous, but it's still fairly straightforward. So,
Indeed.
Support your local small bookstores, mom and pop shops.